This is Karli Viña here. This is episode 290 of At Percussion, and we're getting pretty high in those numbers there. I think around 290, I'm thinking like, that's a big number. With me today, as usual, our co-host Ben Charles. Hey, Ben.
Hey Karli, how's your summer?
Good. Summer's good so far. How about you?
It's going well. I'm just enjoying the warm weather and getting some practicing done. So yeah.
Yeah, summer practicing is great. And co-host Ksenia Komljenović is also here. Hey, how's it going, Ksenia?
Hey, Karli, it's going well. I am not practicing at the moment. I'm in the middle of working on my upcoming album, and that is a lot of hours of sitting in front of a computer, turning into a shrimp, and then trying to de-shrimp myself in the evening by going out and standing up straight and so on.
De-shrimp.
Ksenia, are
Yeah.
you all finished with the recording portion, or are you still grinding on that?
No, so whatever comes out of this album, whether you are amazed at how incredible it is or appalled at how bad it is, I recorded everything in one day. So
Oh.
that Rite of Spring will be a special salad. We'll see.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did you just have people with limited availability, or you wanted to do that for some reason?
I have masochistic tendencies. No, it was what was available was that one day, and my engineer was like, "What? It's 35 minutes of music. One day, that's nothing. You can do that." And then afterwards, he's like, "Yeah, I think that was a lot." So,
That's a lot. That's a lot. Well, kudos. We look forward to hearing it. When can we hear it?
well, we're hoping for a fall release. We'll see. It's a very slow process, very slow process of losing your eyes and marbles and all those things in the meantime.
And marbles, yeah. Well, we'll look forward to it. Ksenia, we are recording this episode on June 6th, but if you're listening on release day, it'll be June 24th. What happened today in history?
So all the important stuff. First of all, let's move backwards. 2011, this album marked my life. Beyonce released Four. I don't know how many of you care, but her fourth album, because she's obsessed with number four. It's, she's born on September 4, married on something 4, and so on. So if you don't know which one that is, that's the one that has that cool song, Run the World Girls. That was my anthem, and I have many embarrassing videos from that time of dancing with my girlfriends on my terrace in Serbia and trying to interpret that dance. So that's crazy. All right, so moving backwards, a blogger in 2008 thought it would be a good idea to leak some finished tracks from Guns N' Roses' Chinese Democracy album, and then received a visit from the FBI and a cease and desist letter. So you don't want to do that. Don't do that. Even if it's Guns N' Roses and nobody else cares anymore about them, just don't leak other people's work early. 1965, this is for Ben. Ben, have you heard of A Spaniard in the Works? A major
I have
literary.
I have not.
So, your favorite John Lennon, I swear, if I find at least one date in the history of time where the Beatles haven't done something, I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to call Ben immediately and say, they didn't do anything on this day. But apparently, on June 24th, John Lennon released his second book, A Spaniard in the Works. And the book consists of nonsensical stories. Sounds like
Sounds on brand.
so that's that. But I think what's most interesting is we have a couple of birthdays. Terry Riley in 1935, happy birthday. Famous American minimalist composer, wrote in C. And then Harry Partch in 1901. And Ben again talks a lot about Partch all the time. He's the philosophic music man seduced into carpentry, right? That's how everybody calls him. But I just wanted to say, I don't know if y'all have heard of Marimba Eroica. Have you seen it?
Oh yes.
Have you played on it?
I have not, but no, I've definitely seen it.
Right. I mean, I think it's awesome for our listeners who don't know. So this is a gigantic instrument that in Partch's book, Genesis of a Music, he writes that the performer of the marimba eroica should at times convey the vision of Ben-Hur in his chariot. So, like, imagine that and then perform like that. But there's a wonderful little video that I wanted to share because I don't want to explain too much. I mean, this is a huge instrument. The lowest pitch of it giving an approximate at F below piano lowest A. So it's really, really low. It's 22 hertz. And I just wanted to share a little bit to show our folks what that looks like for those who are watching.
So we can hardly even hear this tone when we're rehearsing, and we get nothing from this one, which is super. I cannot. Can you hear it from out there? I can barely hear it from here. Yeah, there's nothing up here, but this one sounds amazing anywhere.
So you need huge, huge mallets to play, and basically it's so low that it's almost inaudible where you're standing and you have to get on a riser, and it's just insanely like the resonators are 8 feet long, which is 2.5 meters or something. It's insane. So there you go. If you don't know anything about Harry Partch, go check out what he's done with Marimba Eroica.
I was just going to mention a couple of things to follow up. We had a couple of At Percussion episodes, number 82 with Emil Richards, who actually worked with Harry Partch, and we talked to him about that. And then episode 188, we actually had members from the LA Partch Ensemble on the podcast. So, and they actually showed us some of the instruments. So it was really cool. But me being a total marimba nerd, has anyone ever heard of Michiko Takahashi? She was a Japanese marimba player, as my teacher Bill Murch puts it, the other Japanese marimba player other than Keiko Abe. And she released an album called Contrabass Marimba Explosion, and she had her own contrabass marimba extension built, and it was basically marimba eroica. It's just these massive bars, and there's pictures of it. It's pretty crazy.
Wow. Okay, have to check that out. That's cool.
Did you see in that video how slow the bars were vibrating?
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
huge. It's insane.
Cool. Well, thanks, Ksenija. You know, someday you're gonna have to share with us your Beyoncé videos. And I think a while back you were talking about some like spoken word poetry over some minimalism. We're like, you keep. I don't know. We're waiting. Maybe over the summer we'll do some.
Dangling that carrot.
My embarrassment, my public embarrassment moments. I like to, small chunks and small bits. I can't release them all at the same time.
But yeah, like you're just leaving so much to the imagination. That's
true.
Yeah. But can't be as bad as people might imagine, right?
It's worse. It's worse. But I'll let you think about it.
Well, thank you, Ksenija. Without further ado, I'm very happy to introduce our guest today. Donnie Johns is the founder and executive director of the DMV Percussion Academy. He's also adjunct professor of percussion at Bowie State University in Bowie, Maryland, and the percussion director at Northwestern High School in Hyattsville, Maryland. And just recently, back in April, he was elected president of the Maryland-Delaware chapter of PAS, and he also serves on the education committee for PAS. It seems like he's played with just about everybody. He's the principal timpanist of the Apollo Orchestra in Bethesda, Maryland and Washington, D.C., and is the lead percussionist for Soulful Symphony in Columbia, Maryland. He's played extra with Richmond Symphony, Annapolis Symphony, Maryland Symphony, and many, many more. He is also a proud member of both the Gateways Festival Orchestra in Rochester, New York, and the Color of Music Festival Orchestra in Charleston, South Carolina, which are two groups that spotlight professional Black classical musicians. So, Donnie, it's wonderful to see you, to have you on the show. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here.
So I thought I'd ask a couple questions about the DMV Percussion Academy. Let's start there. Tell us about the program and what's it going to look like this summer?
Yeah, so we are entering in our 4th year of having our summer percussion workshop. I started this organization back in 2018, and our mission is to expose, engage, and enrich young people through all forms of percussive art. I spent a lot of time, as you mentioned, Karli, teaching and playing percussion. And I've noticed over the course of my career, both as a performer and educator, that oftentimes percussionists tend to sort of be in their little silos or camps. Like you kind of have the marimba team over here and the drum set folks over here and the drumline folks over there. And I wanted to create a program or an organization that exposed young people to as many different forms of percussion as possible, because I do believe that there's much to be learned in the way of just learning about all different styles. Percussion is one of those things where, it's evident in every single culture around the planet. And there's so many different styles and genres, and there are many similarities just as there are distinctions. And I think it's important for us to highlight as many different forms of percussion as we can, be it Caribbean, steel pan, Afro-Cuban, Latin, orchestral music, drumline, and I wanted to put it all together into a series of programs for young people.
Well, Donnie, I wanted to ask, I was checking out the DMV Percussion website, and I saw there's 2018 highlights, 2019 highlights, and then 2020 highlights. And I clicked on that thinking like, oh, well, that was probably just like a placeholder and there's going to be nothing there. And I was wrong. There is stuff there. So I'm sure that when you started this, you were not anticipating having to deal with a global pandemic. But could you tell us how you adapted and dealt with that?
Yeah, sure. We did our best, and we pivoted like everyone else and did a virtual workshop last summer. And all things considered, I'm very, very pleased. I'm very much excited to be back in person this summer. Doing percussion through a virtual platform, as we all know, has its limitations. And so I'm grateful that we were able to put forth a successful product last summer, but I'm even more grateful to be back in person. So with my workshop, we have a variety of clinicians that come and present for the students, and some of our students will play for the clinicians, but then also all the students play in a percussion ensemble. And depending on how many different students we have, we'll have multiple sort of ability grouped or experience level grouped percussion ensembles that will perform at the end of the camp. And so with the virtual platform, the clinics were great. Percussion ensemble was more challenging trying to work that out through a virtual platform. We did a clapping piece that ended up being okay, but I'm back. I'm excited to be back in person to actually perform in real time.
I'm sure it's going to be a huge relief to be like, this is so much simpler. We can all play at the same time.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. And admittedly, I'm not the most tech savvy person. I had a technical director who did a great job. But it's just easier to do percussion in person.
Yeah, especially ensemble.
Yes,
so
exactly.
What did kind of the development in the academy look like? This is the 4th year. Are there things like, what did you learn along the way that you wish you knew sooner?
Oh my goodness. So we've actually, I'll sort of start a little bit off topic and circle back to that. We've actually have expanded into a variety of initiatives sort of beyond just the summer workshop. We've kind of gotten into different programs. So for example, I've started drum programs at various schools in Washington, D.C. I've partnered with the D.C. public school system to get programs started up, drum lines and just different drum ensembles for schools that don't have music programs. We partnered up with different community centers and wellness centers, just sort of finding different ways to use drumming and percussion as a sort of medium for promoting wellness in a variety of, and just youth development in a variety of facets. As for the summer workshop, it's been taxing. It's been a good learning process for me in terms of developing my organization. This 1 week literally takes about a year to organize, just as far as clinicians and recruiting and finding space and instruments and budget and partnering with the schools and just, picking out music. And, it's really has pushed me in the way of developing my organizational skills, because also, this organization is growing into a larger part of my overall responsibilities, but I still have to teach and play to pay bills and do other things. And so managing this with my other responsibilities, it has been proven to be a challenge, an exciting challenge, but certainly a challenge. I would say in the way of things that I've learned that it's important to make these relationships with the schools in the area, so that when I'm offering my programming, different band directors and schools kind of see this as sort of a supplemental and something that can kind of accompany what they're doing with the teaching, as opposed to kind of getting in the way of what they're offering their students. I want to kind of come alongside it and be a partner, as opposed to somebody that's trying to kind of bulldoze what they're doing. And so just leveraging those relationships has been something I've had to learn and develop over the years.
Well, I had a question to kind of follow up on this, and it's a very prominent issue in music education that was accelerated by the pandemic, and that is access to instruments for percussion students. And it was already difficult, and then obviously in the pandemic, when everyone just had to stay home, you can do a clapping ensemble, but how many clapping ensembles do people want to do before they
Yes.
tire of that? So, could you tell us about just in general how you conquered that before the pandemic, and I guess maybe if it's relevant, what you've done during the pandemic?
Yes, I mean, look, I'll be honest. I mean, we've done a lot of drum pad like everyone else, and spent a lot of time, working with students just kind of on snare fundamentals, using this time to focus on reading, focus this time on rudiments and things of that nature. Thankfully, I have access to a great deal of instruments myself, my own personal instruments, also instruments at some of my schools. I also work part-time for a local backline company, Capital Percussion, that they've also given instruments out to students that have needed them in the community as well. And so again, just being able to kind of leverage those relationships has really been helpful. A lot of doing personal deliveries to students' houses, even apartments, giving them instruments. Okay, you can have this marimba for a couple of weeks, and I got to get it over to this student. This kid can have this vibraphone for a few weeks and get it over to that person. I've kind of done my own sort of DoorDash with percussion, so to speak. So,
I love that.
no tips
Get our
though.
app, download a marimba. Yeah.
Right. No tips yet though. I'm still waiting on those.
No, but you have the benefit of your students are making progress, which is
Yes, there you go. Absolutely. That's the greatest tip of all. Thank you, Karli.
that's worth it, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
That was, I just wanted to applaud you for that, because that was one thing that I saw in public schools, like when everything got shut down. They were like, no, like the equipment's got to stay at school, like there no pickup, nothing. Like, it's like, what's your marimba? I know you want to keep everything in good condition, but what's it gonna do in a band room collecting dust? Like, sit at home.
It's been frustrating, and I had to advocate for that kind of strongly in some different circles, because look, we already, I believe, have sort of biases against us as percussionists, just in terms of not always having band directors who are as knowledgeable about percussion as they are other instruments. And so if you're going to take an entire year and deny us access to playing our instruments, you're going to put us even further behind. And so we have to be resourceful and figure out ways to service our percussionists in the same way we're servicing all the rest of the students. At some point it becomes an advocacy and a accessibility issue that we have to advocate for.
Yeah, in so many ways, like this inaccessibility to instruments, like that's always been a problem, and we know that as educators. Like, kids everywhere are getting yelled at, why aren't you prepared, why aren't you keeping up, like beginning band, your bell music isn't learned. But it's like, hey, like, fifth graders can't always stay after school to practice, and
Exactly.
if they have something at home, every school's different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we know that there are challenges. I spent 10 years as a band director myself in elementary and middle school, and so I'm well aware of the perspective of a band director. My thing is, we work towards kind of bridging those gaps and servicing students who have accessibility issues in other ways, be it cognitively or developmentally, physically, what have you. So let's put as much effort into servicing our percussionists who may have accessibility issues as well. So let's just put the effort into it like we do everything else.
Yeah, it's important. I think a lot of these changes are, we're starting to have more conversations, and hopefully some of these things are lasting, like being willing to send instruments home, or even small practice instruments. Donnie,
Absolutely.
I want to circle back just for a second before we leave talking about the academy. Is registration still going to be open on June 24th?
Yes, it will be. We begin on June 28th, but registration will be open right up until the first day. So students and parents can register at dmvpercussion.org. Again, dmvpercussion.org.
Awesome. We'll put it in the show notes too, so people can find it. And it's open to what, middle school, high school?
Yes, students in grades 6 through 12.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you mentioned one other thing on kind of your activities with DMV Percussion, and you mentioned that it's been a medium for promoting wellness. I wonder if you'd tell us a little bit more about what that's looked like for you.
Yeah, so actually we have sort of expanded our initiatives beyond just working with young people. Currently, I'm working with the Director of Veterans Affairs for Prince George's County. Prince George's County is a suburban county right next to Washington, D.C. in Maryland. And we've been working at developing programming for military veterans who are dealing with anxiety, depression, even forms of trauma and PTSD. We're seeing how drumming and drumming activities can actually work towards promoting, sort of quelling some of the anxiety and depression, just helping to promote wellness. You know, we know it's not a silver bullet cure-all. We're not promoting it as such, but we have found that just being involved in music activities, particularly drumming and percussion, has served sort of a soothing benefit for military veterans. We also have partnered with a community center in Washington, Southeast Washington, D.C. It's an area that has its challenges sort of socioeconomically, and there's a community center called the Trayon Community Center, and it's for students who have specifically been affected by gun violence. They've had family members that have tragically been victims of gun violence, and so we've gone in there and presented free drum classes, free drum programming, and it's been very, very successful. The students, the community, the families enjoy it very much. And so it's really fulfilling to use drumming and percussion sort of beyond just concerts and performances, and see how music really can deeply affect people's lives, especially those who need it most.
That's so great to hear that it sounds like really meaningful, important work beyond let's get really good at our craft and practice a whole bunch and help train others to do that. That's very
exactly. And I'll say too, just as a quick point, I think that's kind of where we need to head moving forward. Not that we haven't already been doing that in certain areas, but you know, oftentimes we're trying to find kind of relevancy in what we do, and we're often trying to find funding and support. And so I think the more that we can connect our gifts and our talents with larger themes and larger issues, the more we can find support, relevancy, and fulfillment for ourselves.
Donnie, when I read your bio, I thought, okay, you must be 175 years old to accomplish all of this. And
smoke and mirrors.
I mean, you're kind of a miracle. And I'm just so amazed at the amount of energy that you have and all the stuff that you do and how much giving back to the community that you do is just amazing. I just
thank you.
That's okay. I'm from Serbia. It's okay.
Oh yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I mean, and I have to say, you know, I'm developing more and more of a team. I have other associates. I've been teaching now for 16 years or so, and so some of my students now have gone on to college, come back now, are adults and are helping out as interns. And so it's you know, the team is expanding. So we've been able to do more because I have, you know, more resources. So it's really been great.
That's amazing. So we had an Instagram question from Jake who asked, what has been the hardest part of your career?
The hardest part? Wow, that's a great question. Honestly, I'm the kind of person where kind of just as you were saying, you know, I like having my hands in a lot of different things. And, you know, inevitably, you know, you can't do everything, right? And so I was just talking to a friend of mine a few days ago. Sometimes I have to take time to figure out, you know, sometimes you have to set aside the good for better things, right? And so I'm the kind of person that always wants to do, I want to play here, and I want to fundraise over here, and I want to teach over here, and I want to, you know, business develop over here and whatever. And so like literally, you know, inevitably you can't do it all. So just being able to leverage my time, leverage my abilities, and kind of leverage just the goals that I want to accomplish, you know, just figuring out what is of first importance. Everything has some level of importance, but what is the first importance, right? And so just managing time and priorities has been an ongoing challenge.
So how do you handle that? Any special books or coaches or people that have inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, definitely just the people I surround myself with. You know, I try to surround myself with people that are leaders, people that are wise, people that can kind of pour into me. You know, I am blessed to have a great family, close circle of friends, and just trying to find time, no matter how busy I am, to find time to just kind of get away, decompress, you know, just rest, pray, just kind of just find time for myself. And I find that the better I take care of myself, the better I'm fit to help serve and do for others. I think when I was younger, like I'm 37, it's like in my 20s and kind of in my early 30s, I would burn out a lot because I didn't do that. Whereas now I'm learning, okay, like self-care is just as important as everything else. And actually everything else flows better when you take care of yourself.
Do you think that finding the balance, like kind of, juggling different projects and taking care of yourself, has that seemed easier in some ways through the pandemic or more challenging?
Selfishly, yes, it actually has been. I mean, I thank God my family's been healthy. No one close in my close family or friends has been affected, directly by COVID. And so for me, it's given me time to really kind of pause and reflect in a lot of ways and sort of regroup, kind of organize, figure out, what my goals are moving forward. Money got tight. I mean, I'm not going to lie, gigs were pretty much half my income. So when gigs went away, that was like half my income. Thankfully, teaching kind of held me over, but, things did get tight. But what it also did is it gave me time, like I said, to sort of plan and organize. And a lot of the business growth that I've had with DMV has occurred through this pandemic, having time to really sort of apply for grants, get different donors, build out a board, strategically plan, et cetera. So
this how do you do all this stuff question comes up a lot with percussionists like yourself that have their own playing career and a teaching thing and a rental thing, right? And it always like reminds me of the famous quote. I say it, I feel like every other episode by Leonard Bernstein, but to achieve great things, two things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time. And it's like,
exactly.
You just do it. That's all. That's all there is to it.
And I've always been a very sort of driven person. I'm passionate about what I do. I enjoy it. And so as you guys can all know too, as musicians, when you enjoy what you're doing, it drives you all the more. It's still work, but it's more, you're more energized about it.
Well, Donnie, I was looking over your bio and I noticed that you play in something called the Gourmet Symphony, and I am such a food fan that I had
Yeah,
to deep dive on that a little bit. So I have a little topic to talk about today, and then I'd love to hear about your work with that group.
sure.
So I found an article from the publishing house called Gestalten, and the article is called "How Music is Creating New Cultures Around Food." And if you Google that, you can find that article. But the article begins and it says, "Understanding your purpose is especially important in the restaurant world. Anybody can make a similar menu, but the purpose is what makes a restaurant stand out in a fierce crowd." And so the article explores two stories from their new book called Delicious Places that focuses on the purpose of music in the food world. And sort of the thesis of the article is you've probably never selected a venue because of the music, but you've left because of it. And so there's a Japanese composer named Ryuichi Sakamoto, and he visited a restaurant in Manhattan called Kajitsu. It's a Japanese vegan restaurant in Manhattan that focuses on cuisine based on the principles of Buddhism from the 13th century. And so Sakamoto, this composer, got in touch with the chef of the restaurant, Hiroki Odo, and he said that the food was as good as the beauty of a 1,000-year-old Japanese villa in Kyoto, but the music was, and I quote, like Trump Tower. He said, he did some digging on it, and the music had been selected by management in Japan. And so Sakamoto proposed that he would make the playlist for the restaurant for free so that he could continue to eat there and enjoy their food. And so the chef brought it up to management, and they agreed. And the article says he originally planned for an ambient playlist, but ended up selecting warm and upbeat music. And when I listened to the playlist that's on the website, it still sounded pretty ambient to me. It includes works by John Cage, Arvo Part, and Aphex Twin. And the other space examined in this article is called Spiritland in London. And it wasn't really clear to me. Maybe someone else that read this understood it better, but from what I could tell, it sounds like it's a restaurant and recording studio during the day. And then in the evening, the recording studio area converts into a bar. That's the best that I could understand it from this article. And it's in London, and their goal is to preserve London's unique music scene. And so I kind of, after reading this article and getting inspired, I dug a little bit more, and I found some actual scientific research about the impact of music on dining. And so I wanted to point out two things. One, there's an article from the Journal of Consumer Research in 2014, and it found, among other things, that slow music could reduce groups from leaving before seated, increase food and bar purchases, and increase the gross margins of a restaurant. And then the other thing that I found was a 2015 study from the Journal of Sensory Studies, and it found, I quote, cross-modal correspondence. So for example, high-pitched sounds are associated with sweet and sour tastes, low-pitched sounds and dissonant sounds are associated with bitterness, staccato sounds are associated with crunchiness, and legato sounds are associated with creaminess. So for example, in a study, participants that tasted chocolate while listening to a higher pitched soundtrack actually thought that it tasted sweeter than those who did not. And there's a British chef by the name of Heston Blumenthal. He has a restaurant called Fat Duck, and he was fascinated by all of this. And so he actually created an experience called Sound of the Sea. And so the dish is sashimi. And then there's a sand, which, me being a culinary person, I think he uses tapioca maltodextrin powder to make a fat into a sand-like substance, and a saltwater-inspired foam, which I think he probably uses soy lecithin for that. And it's served on a box that has a glass top and sand underneath, and they bring it out also with a conch shell, and inside the conch shell is an iPod with a pair of headphones. And when you put them on, you can hear sounds of the sea. And so if you're watching this on YouTube, let's see here, I can share this. There we go. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see this. This is an actual picture of the dish right here. And if you scroll down on this page, it tells you a little bit about this. And this is the little soundscape, sound of the sea, that you listen to when you're dining on this. I'll be quiet so you can hear it for a minute. So anyway, that's that. I thought it was interesting. I'm into the whole like ambient noise, Brian Eno sort of music for airports thing. But Donnie, you play in this group called Gourmet Symphony, and it sounds like maybe not to that scientific level, but there is a sort of pairing of music and food and wine. Could you tell us about that group?
Sure, absolutely. And so the group actually has, at least currently, sort of dissipated. The director took on a different post now. He's no longer in the DC area. But I played with the group for a handful of years, and it was a really unique and really fun experience. Kind of like you were talking about with that article, it paired various styles of classical music with various styles of food. And so we would have these, and it was a very much kind of a more of an intimate, more of an informal performance atmosphere. And so you would have the musicians sort of be in the center of a circle, and all the different participants or the patrons would dine around the orchestra, and you almost sort of in the orchestra. So it was a very kind of intimate, sort of close setting. And you'd have multiple courses, and each course would pair with a various classical music piece, not an entire symphony, maybe one movement of a work or one extra of a work. And so you weren't listening to an entire, 2.5 hour symphony performance. It was maybe a 45-minute, maybe an hour, what you would typically do in a dining experience. And it was fun. It was a way for people to experience music sort of out of the box, informal. The musicians would ask us, or the people that were dining would ask us questions in between pieces, and we would talk, we would converse, we would take breaks in the middle and actually have a course. We would sit down at the table and have a course with some of the people that were dining. So it's very much kind of an interactive and sort of intimate entertainment experience. So it was a lot of fun.
That's really cool. I've done, or I went to a concert. I remember when I lived in Hong Kong, there was a beer pairing with percussion.
Oh, cool.
Concert. Yeah, there was a percussionist, or there is a wonderful percussionist there, Karen Yu, and she brews her own beer, I believe, with her partner even. And we went to this little place, and we had 7, I think, types of beer in front of us with a little menu, and it told you, this one goes with Cage, this one goes with this one goes with that. I'm not a beer connoisseur, sadly. I think that that experience was partly wasted on me, but really interesting to think that, oh, chocolate notes in this beer should really go well with Lou Harrison. Like,
Look, sign me up. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
This is just so cool. I think, we've talked a lot about like movement and how visually what people see when they hear you can affect how they hear what you're playing. And now I'm just thinking about like food in a whole other way. When I read this article, Ben, I was really like, oh, okay. Like thinking about background music at restaurants. Like this is kind of like that time that Ben made us all talk about hold music for a while. But no, now that you're connecting it, I'm like, wow, like what if you're listening to something like, what did you say? Crunchy is associated with staccato. Like
Crunchy is yeah. And like beyond just the musical connection, one of the things I read said they put headphones on people and basically would change the sound that they heard when they ate food. So it would make your crunchy food sound less crunchy, and people thought the food was stale, even though it was the same thing, which is just so weird.
it's so cool. It's so awesome. And I've never thought about this.
That's crazy. But when you played that little excerpt of what the sea sounds like, because not all of us know, Ben, I thought immediately how it slowed me down. If I had been eating like a burger like crazy, I'd be like, oh, I gotta chill. I can't be out of time with what's going on in my ears.
Well, Donnie, since we got to talk a little bit about your experience with Gourmet Symphony, I did want to ask you, because you've played like with so many different groups and different styles of music, orchestra gigs and musicals and playing with churches. What have been some highlights for you with your performance career?
Oh man, that's an awesome question. I think playing with the group Soulful Symphony, we played for the opening of the African American History Museum in Washington, D.C. in 2000, a few years back, maybe 2014, I think. And
if I could interrupt, is that the thing that Quincy Jones put on?
So it's led by a guy named Darren Atwater, and it's
okay.
Yeah, it's been around for about.
Sorry, I meant that event, the opening of the museum.
So I believe he was involved in. They had sort of like a week-long opening sort of festival event, and he was involved in that. He was
gotcha. Yeah, because I just watched the Quincy documentary on Netflix a few weeks ago, and they had that. I think it was that event on it. Yeah,
that's right. You're right. That's right.
Yeah, it was just so cool on that event. Like they were like having trouble getting a hold of Oprah, and Quincy just picks up, Oprah, I need you at this thing.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, I'm trying to think, I'll say, so back at the University of Maryland in my sophomore year, I played in the symphony orchestra, and we did a week-long side-by-side with the National Symphony, and we did Ravel's Daffodils of Chloe. And I remember that week was really when I knew that I wanted to be an orchestral percussionist. Like I grew up, high school and first couple years of college, heavy in the drum line and playing in concert band. And I love those experiences, percussion ensemble and all that. But just that week has always, that was like the light bulb, moment for me where this is what I want to do, And so that's always been kind of a special week. And it's very early in my career, obviously a sophomore in college, but that's something that really kind of sparked me wanting to be a percussionist and be primarily an orchestral percussionist.
That's so cool. Sometimes you think about, we've all done probably some kind of side-by-side or just like educational outreach, these things where we meet students, and to know that some of them are going to have that like aha moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you did, like playing, you're sitting side-by-side with NSO. And
yeah.
Like, oh, okay. Like it just clicks.
Yeah, just being a part of just that amazing sound. Of course, the Ravel piece is beautiful, the deafness, but just having that experience is something that like I'll never forget. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, what's your best freelancing advice? What's your secret sauce?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I hate to sound so generic, but it really is true. Just leveraging relationships. In the DC area, there are a lot of great percussionists. This is with the military bands and just the culture around here. There's a lot of great drummers and percussionists all over the place. And there are a good amount of gigs in the area, but we definitely have way more players than we do gigs. And so what's going to distinguish a person from getting a job from someone who doesn't is how you treat people, your level of respect, professionalism, not being a jerk, being organized, being prepared, but just being respectful, not being a know-it-all, just being a team player. I've been in situations a lot of times where, a guy's playing in an orchestra, maybe he's an extra, he's new or what have you, and he's trying to like go back and forth with the principal player about, how a cymbal crash should sound, or go back and forth with the conductor. Who cares? Like, you just, just do your job and, know your position in that moment, right? And you can get called more. And so just leveraging relationships, and also I will say just being versatile, in college, again, like I was saying before, and this is another reason why I'm so adamant about getting this across to my students. Yes, at some point you may want to pick a particular area that you prioritize, but even still, if you want to be a working percussionist, know how to play drum set, know how to play timpani, know how to play xylophone, know a little bit of Latin, Afro-Cuban styles, be a versatile player. And the more versatile you are, the more work you'll get.
Yeah, that's great advice. You can't go wrong with that. And everybody has their strengths and weaker areas or areas of interest too, but especially if you want to be able to like pick up your phone and say, yes, I can do that, take in as much as you possibly can.
And I also say, kind of along with that too, just try to go the extra mile. So for example, if you're playing in a section and you're given a particular part, see if you can, just be familiar with everybody's part. I've been in situations before, especially when I was younger, where like a guy gets sick or somebody else, can't make it, and you have to pivot and play someone else's part. And so just being ready to do that, being ready to pivot and just be solutions to an organization's problem, whatever that may be, being versatile, being ready to step up, being ready to kind of improv and handle things on the fly. People remember that.
Donnie, you're definitely not, what did you say, 37? 137.
You see the grays, that's why you see I got a couple of grays in there. So,
No, not at all. So I'd like to talk to you about the issues of social justice, and perhaps you'd tell us a bit about what you think the state of percussion and classical world is in terms of racism and social justice.
Yeah, well, look, I think, I have been pleased to see what appears to be sort of a genuine desire to right some wrongs and just be more of an inclusive community. I think, honestly, I believe that percussionists can be the ones to really sort of pioneer this. I mean, the way I was in the music community, because as I was saying earlier, percussion exists, drumming and percussion exists in every single culture on the planet, and so it's almost, in addition to obvious reasons, it's also kind of ridiculous to be a percussionist and be sort of anti-diversity or be almost sort of like, an imperious or elitist or what have you, because literally, we can all learn from every single culture, on this planet. And so I have seen, I think through Percussive Art Society and other the drum companies and organizations, a concerted and seemingly genuine push to be more inclusive and diverse. I think that's obviously very important. I think it's also important for Black percussionists, Black musicians, to sort of take our own agency and feel confident to lead out our own organizations, and not think that we have to always wait for certain doors to be open. I'm all for inclusion. I'm all for working together and all those things. In addition to that, we also need to boldly pioneer our own initiatives and see to it that things get done from our own doing. And so that's one of my reasons why I've started my organization and things like that. I want to continue to be collaborative and partner and be inclusive, but I'm also going to do the job myself too.
And that's the main difference, that's so important, and I'm glad that you said that. The big difference between somebody like waiting for an opportunity and somebody who's, has a percussion academy and, kind of runs their own organization is just like that you've done it. You didn't wait for somebody else to say, hey, I want to pay you to do this for my organization.
Right, exactly. And then oftentimes, careful how I say certain things. So you can be in those positions and really affect real, genuine change. Sometimes you can be in those positions and sort of just be a token and kind of just perpetuate what's the status quo, what's already been going on, right? So it's like, okay, we have this broken system. And so for some people, they think the solution is to put a black face out in front of the broken system. And so we're good now. Everything's broken, but we have a black face in front of it. So it's all good now. That doesn't work for me, and it shouldn't work for anyone else. I can get a lot more into that, but maybe on a different podcast.
That's fine. Well, thanks for sharing what you did. I think I agree with you. I think I see things moving in right directions all over the place, especially.
I agree.
A lot of conversations are happening that weren't happening before, 1 year ago, even 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think, opportunities like this are amazing. It needs to be collaborative, where we're genuinely, desiring the thoughts and ideas of everyone, right? As opposed to just telling people what they should be doing. Actually say, let me listen. What are your thoughts? What are your ideas? And we're genuinely, collaborating and speaking and listening to one another.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not easy. It's usually messy. There's
Sure. Absolutely.
Well, thanks for the work that you're doing.
Thank you and I thank you for highlighting it. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah. Donnie, I do want to ask you a little bit about your teaching at Bowie State and at Northwestern High School, and I know for many years you taught at DC Youth Orchestra.
That's right.
And I taught there for about a year, I think.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Yep.
A long time ago.
Yep.
You did so much teaching, and you mentioned you were a band and orchestra director for 10 years.
And something like that, yeah. It's a long time ago. It feels like it was a long time ago, but it was like 6 years ago, so yeah.
It was like a lifetime ago.
Oh, my goodness, it really does. It really does.
So you've got a wide variety of experience. I guess I want to ask you, how do you think that we as percussionists can help kind of bridge the knowledge gap between what non-percussionist educators know, like in their band classrooms, or general music classrooms, and what we know that their percussion students need?
Yeah, that's another excellent question. It's something that I am going to, along with my team now, really kind of going to make a very concerted push this upcoming year, and also with being like president of the Maryland Delaware chapter of PAS. We want to partner with the local organizations, the State Music Education Association, public school systems, and get into these schools to help band directors, to help equip them to be more effective and knowledgeable percussion educators. What happens is, I was speaking this a little bit before, and I'm actually partnered up with the Maryland State Department of Education with this very initiative to get different workshops and programs, again, not just for students, but also for educators. And what I'm working on now, let the cat out of the bag, whatever. I'm working on actually setting up potentially accredited courses so band directors can learn more about how to become better percussion educators. But the incentive for them, along with just being better pedagogues, is also they can potentially get professional development, continuing education credits. And so I want to set up a series of workshops for them, because what often happens, as I'm sure we all know, I'm sure you guys have all been percussion specialists in some regard, and probably still are. A lot of times, most band directors are far more knowledgeable in woodwinds, brass, strings than they are in percussion. And if percussionists are being taught by an educator who is ill-equipped to teach them, then what you have is an implicit learning bias happening in that classroom. And so I don't say that to scold or demean band directors. I know how much is on their shoulders, and I know how overwhelming it is having been one. But what I'm saying is that is a glaring problem, and we need to come in and kind of bridge that gap and serve as that and be that solution.
That's so important, especially with the professional development credits and everything. But even just kind of being able to make contact and, hey, these resources are here and here's things that can really help. Then it goes from, I think a lot of band directors feel like I've got these kids in the back of the room and don't know what to do with them. I just try to keep them out of trouble.
Right. And we need to make sure that we are making ourselves visible and available to these band directors. And they also need to get off their hides and take advantage of these resources as well. It's a two-way street.
Well, and so another really important, I think, aspect of that is the education of future educators, right? And do you teach percussion techniques or percussion methods?
So I am. We're letting all cats out of the bag this podcast. So I'm going to be at UMBC this fall doing percussion methods at there. So yes, I will be starting this fall. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I'm already sort of planning ideas around that. And look, I mean, it's once a week for a semester. So, we all know you can't give students the bevy of the world of percussion in a semester. But what I want to do is, in addition to teaching as many different elements as I can, I also want to leave them with sort of a well or a repository of resources that they can draw from as they go on into their careers, just different contacts, different resources, so they know where to look when they need to.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing I always try to stress with that class is like, please don't think you're going to be bothering me if you have a question in a year. Like you want to know what kind of timpani heads to buy or like everything. Hey, can you come in for a session? Like,
I'd be happy to, because again, it's like, it's all about the students. And I mean, the students need to receive the same level of instruction, high level of instruction that all the rest of the non-percussionists are receiving.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing, I think probably we've all seen PASIC this year is $60 for registration, which is like, that's pretty amazing. That's
awesome. I've already registered. That is awesome.
It's so cool. It's so good. I think it's a relief to everybody. But maybe that's an opportunity too for some of these non-percussionists, band directors and educators to go and get professional development credits and get some information.
That's an excellent idea. I didn't even think about that. That's something that I need to promote. So yes, I mean, that's something that, because it's so cheap this year, especially, come on. And also with some of these educators, if they make it a priority, in some areas, the schools will help with support, as far as getting them there and that sort of thing. Is if it's seen as legitimate professional development, which it certainly is.
Right. Yeah, that's great. So we've talked a little bit about accessibility and all these things, and you mentioned, or I think I read in your bio that you've served on some grant reviewing panels. And I'm wondering if you've noticed kind of patterns or what kind of qualities or, kind of total package preparation do you see on proposals that are successful?
Yeah, that's a whole world in and of itself. And yeah, I've served on different grant reviewing panels in DC and Maryland and Prince George's County. And I've applied for grants myself. One of the things that I did over the pandemic was begin to apply for a lot of different grants for the organization. And we won a few small ones. We were rejected by a lot of them. And that's, of course, part of the process. I think I applied for probably, maybe 18 grants. And we won 3, so I did a lot of that over the pandemic and even now. But yeah, to answer your question, I think, look, organization is very, very important. And so what I've had to learn, in my experience is, the content of what my organization delivers as far as the instruction, the performance is the content aspect is cool. It's good. It's on point. What I've had to learn is, for as much as that is of value, what's of equal and sometimes even more value, you can debate the merit in that, but is just kind of the structural organization around like your budgeting and your programming and demographics of who's going to be affected by what, and all these just charts and spreadsheets and crap I don't care about. That's why I've had to hire other people to kind of help do that for me. But a lot of these panelists are not always musicians, And so they will often look at non-curricular or non-content related aspects of your organization, which are important. I mean, budgeting, just kind of all the organizational aspects, insurance and all these different types of things are very important, and so I guess to answer your question, the non-musical aspects have to be just as put together as the musical aspects. They want line items to a T for every single, how you're going to spend this money, if we give it to you, what other supporting mechanisms do you have in place? How much are they giving you? What is that going towards? And so just all the sort of the business and structural aspects, just beyond or outside of music, are just as, if not more important. And I've it's been somewhat of a frustrating process, but I'm learning that that's a necessary aspect of it. And I'm also learning, like I said, to bring on other people that are more, more savvy and more skilled with the budgeting and accounting and PowerPoints and stuff that I'm not good at.
I think this is a really important skill. And again, learn about it for those young ones who are listening.
Yes.
Learn about it as much as you can. Learn from wiser ones, and then let wiser ones, if you have them around you, do it for you.
Absolutely. All your friends that are majoring in business and finance and accounting, like, hang on to them. They may not be cool now, but they're going to be super cool in 10 years. Hang on to them.
All right, make friends with nerds.
Yes. Yes,
there you go. But I was going to say a piece of advice from me, and I did a lot of this grant writing myself, is if you go through the hurdle, and trust me, the first one that you write is usually the worst, and it takes the longest time. Do not end up submitting just for one grant for that cycle, because you've already done the work. Recycle what you did there and apply for another grant, because you've already figured out the programming and everything that you need for that year's project. Apply for 18, because to get 3 out of 18 is huge.
Oh, thank you.
Apply for as many as you can. I think
that is awesome advice. And I learned that about halfway through. I was spending, all these weeks and months putting together these grants, and like an idiot, like not saving any of it. And then another grant comes along and it's asking me for the same thing. I'm like, I should just save what I had. So yes, that's excellent advice.
The things we learn along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, congratulations on the grants that you did win.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's great advice.
And what that's been able to do, what that's been able to do is just allow for us to offer more scholarships to students that can't afford some of the programs that we offer. Many of our programs are free of charge, but but we also need to charge for certain things as well. And so these grants, a lot of the money that we get from these grants goes to giving students scholarships to be a part of the programs that do cost money.
That's awesome. Making things happen. I think it would be easy just to be like, here's the tuition, here's, make it happen. Like, I don't have any more money to give, but no, go and do it.
Right, exactly.
That's great. Yeah. Hey, Ben, I think you have something.
Yeah, before we wrap up, I just wanted to kind of tie up a loose end from earlier. Ksenija was talking about that marimba eroica, and I did just a little bit of Googling while we were talking, and I mentioned Michiko Takahashi. So this is her playing her contrabass marimba. You can see there's a regular marimba on the left side, and then the contrabass marimba with these massive resonators. And William Mersch talked about this in a little lecture he did for Beverly Johnston. And there's also, if you go on YouTube, and her name is actually spelled very phonetically, Michiko Takahashi. You can just Google that or search that on YouTube. And there's actually a video of her performing, and you can hear a little bit of the sound of this thing. So yeah, just a really little clip. But Bill Mersch was at that recital. I think it was in Carnegie Hall. But he said you couldn't so much hear it as feel it. He said whenever she hit a note, it just sounded like a truck drove by. So really, really interesting, bizarre instrument. She also plays she calls it a glass harmonica, I think, but it's really more like a glass marimba. Really, I don't know, just a marimba player that I feel like isn't such a big name in the US, but is a big name in Japan.
That's so cool. Yeah, I feel like with that recording, we're hearing a lot of the highs, and I'm sure it, judging by how it
Yeah,
looks,
YouTube audio maybe isn't the greatest.
yeah. Well, it's probably better not through Zoom, but hopefully people can check it out. Well, thanks, Ben. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Donnie, for joining us today. It's awesome to see you again and chat with you. And thanks, Ben. Thanks, Ksenija. We'll see you on the next episode.
My pleasure. Thank you all.